I'm going to go over the parts of the sewing machine. The power switch is back here. Makes kind of a funny noise when you turn it on. So that's the power switch. The hand wheel turns toward your body. So when you turn it, make sure it always turns towards you, because you can actually damage the sewing machine if you turn it the other direction. Your foot pedal plugs in right here, and when you put it on the floor, make sure that you don't drop it on the floor. Always pick it up by this part. When you put it away, don't wind it too tight here because it breaks the wires in the cord. And whenever you pick this up, don't pick it up by the cord. Grab it by the base of the pedal to pick it up. There's a little button underneath where the foot pedal plugs in. And if you push this in, what happens is it lowers the feed dogs. So if you look over here, you'll notice that the feed dogs went down. But when you regularly sew, you want those up because they pull your fabric through for you. So I'm going to push the button back out, and then you have to turn your hand wheel to get them to come back up. And now the feed dogs have come back up. So if you ever notice you're having a problem and your fabric's not moving through, it could be that that button was pushed in. So you can always, check that. All right, we're going to come over here. This is called your bobbin cover. And inside is where your bobbin case and your bobbin go when you sew. This is called your stitch plate. And if you look closely, there are lines on it and fractions, numbers, measurements, so that you can sew straight lines. This is your presser foot, and it holds your fabric down while you sew. So on the back of the sewing machine, this is your presser foot lifter, and it makes your presser foot move up and down. All right, this is your thread cutter, and when you are finished sewing, you'll pull out your threads and slide it in there to cut your threads. This silver part right here is the thread take-up cover, and it just covers the moving part behind it, which is right here. This is called your thread take-up lever. As I turn the hand wheel toward me, you'll notice that it moves up and down. It's really important when you thread your sewing machine that the thread is through that lever, or you get big knots when you sew. On the top of your sewing machine, this is called your thread tension adjustment, and it controls how tight your thread is held in the sewing machine. This is your normal setting right here with the red line and the black dot. So if you're having problems with your thread being too loose or it's pulling on your fabric too tight, this could be off. Sometimes you have to adjust it manually if you're having problems with your thread not lying evenly on your stitches. This is called your bobbin pre-tension. You only use this when you wind a bobbin. This is your rear thread guide. For when you thread your sewing machine, your thread goes here first. This is your bobbin winder, which winds a bobbin for you. One thing to remember is this has a switch. So when this switch is pushed in and I push on the foot pedal, it spins. When I push it out, the needle moves. So if you sit at your sewing machine and hear a buzzing sound, and your needle is not moving, it's your bobbin winder. So just flip it back over. You can also use this as kind of a safety switch. So when you're threading your sewing machine, you can push this in so that you don't accidentally step on your pedal or somebody else accidentally step on your pedal. When you're threading and you have your fingers right by the needle, this can kind of be a safety switch. You can push it in. So if someone did push on the pedal, this would only spin and the needle wouldn't go when your fingers are right next to the needle. This right here is your spool pin. This is where you put your spool of thread. But there is also an alternative spool pin right back here. So if you happen to be missing this white cap, you can always stick your spool on this spool pin back here. All right, we're going to go to the screen. This displays your settings for sewing. The number of the stitch always goes right here. And if you look at these buttons over here, these are the stitch selection buttons. So if I wanted to do this stitch with the zigzag, I'd hit number 2, and now my screen shows me that I'm doing a number 2 stitch. These buttons up here by the screen, the first set is called your stitch width buttons, and when you push on the arrow, you'll notice a bar graph comes up, and if you put it all the way up past a 5, you're going to have a really large zigzag stitch. If I put it all the way down to a 0, then I'm going to have a straight stitch because it doesn't have any zigzag in it. This button right here will change the position of your needle. So when I push it, if you can look at the needle, you'll notice that it goes from side to side. If it's not moving for you, just try turning your hand wheel first and then try it again and it should move. The last set of buttons are called the stitch length buttons, and they change how long or how short your stitch is. So if I move this all the way up to the top, I'm going to have really long stitches. If I put it all the way down to the bottom, I'm going to have really short stitches. Now if you ever mess up these settings, all you have to do is turn your machine off, turn it back on, and it will reset everything to normal. The normal settings for sewing is 0 zigzag, because it's a straight stitch, and your needle's in the center, and stitch length is just a little bit over 2. And those are your normal settings. These buttons right here, this one with the half will make your sewing machine sew at half speed, so it will go slower if you push that. This one changes the way that the needle stops. So if you push it, this arrow is now down, which means every time you take your foot off of the pedal when you're sewing, your needle will stop down in your fabric. If I put it so the arrow's up, every time you stop sewing, the needle will be up in from your fabric. And most of the time you want it to be up, so that's where it will usually be. A couple other buttons over here. This is your number button, so if you want to choose these stitches right here, you have to push the number button first. So if I wanted number 11, you hit the number and then 1, 1, and it will change your button to 11. Because if you wanted 12 and you just hit 1, 2, it would change it from 1 then to 2. So you have to hit the number button first to change it to a 2-digit mode. And then this is a clear delete button. And those are pretty much, oh, one last part that I almost forgot is right here. This is your reverse button, which is really important for back stitching when you sew. This makes your machine sew backwards. When you hold it in, it sews backwards. When you let go, it will sew forward. Now, if you tap this machine button quickly, a little U-shaped symbol will appear on here, which is not happening right now. But if you ever see that symbol on there, it means